Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where Alien Romulus' opening weekend box office is a real bummer. Aw, man! The trades are trying to spin it in a positive direction. I guess it did pretty good overseas, but this is sad. As many of you know, I loved this movie, and I felt it could be the Jurassic World of the Alien franchise. It is not. And some of you, I'm sure, are like, oh, it's better to be a better film. No, it's not. Because you don't get another entry unless you make money. Because Hollywood is a business, and they made this movie to turn a profit. Across the Disney empire, and this is getting people to watch the other Alien movies on their streaming services. You know, at the recent Disney earnings call, they were like, synergy. And so that's good. But, you're going to see this number is not good. It's not even the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes of the Alien franchise. And it should have at least been that. All right, so let's discuss. So Alien Romulus opened with a scooch over 40 million. That puts it about 10 million below A Quiet Place Day 1. And it's even more than that below Apes. It's close 15 to 20 million below Apes. I liked Apes, but I think Alien Romulus is a far better film. It's artistic. Maybe that was its problem. Bad Boys 4 opened bigger. It ends with Us opened bigger. Alien Romulus is closest this year to the opening of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And even a little lower than that. And ain't nobody excited about the box office for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. So it's a little ridiculous to say that we should be excited about Alien Romulus' box office. I mean, maybe I'm sure Ghostbusters Frozen Empire was more expensive, but Alien is a huge brand. And it's really not good. Below, you could argue, I guess we're at a space where you could maybe argue either way if you wanted to, but I think it would be disingenuous to argue positive. Although you're welcome to give it a shot down below. So what the heck happened? The reviews are solid, and the audience scores ended up being solid as well. It was very close to a 90% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes when the weekend started out, but the number dropped a little bit as the weekend progressed. It had that controversial third act, right, that's gotten people tweeting. The movie trended top 10 in the United States at least 2 times over the weekend. I hate to say it, but maybe they should have put it on Hulu. Maybe it would have been more valuable to the company as a Hulu release. And then people really would have been checking it out, if it had been, on Hulu at no extra cost like Prey was. Maybe that was the play. Maybe that was the play. All right, so one problem that the movie had, a huge problem that Alien Romulus had, is lack of female moviegoers. 70% male. And as we discussed this, you're going to see that is a little bit too much. And also, ironically, considering the young cast, a little light on 18 to 24. Interestingly, about half of Alien Romulus' opening weekend box office came from premium screens. So the picture that starts to take shape is, hardcore, discerning fans of the franchise that skew over 25, right? It had a real problem attracting casuals. Are you a casual when it comes to the Alien franchise? Why didn't you go? I convinced a number of you to go with my review. I was very happy about that. A number of you were like, wasn't going to go, Grace, but now I will. And I talked to a lot of people in real life also, in the world. I was talking to them. I was like, oh, are you going to see Alien? And they're like, yeah, I hadn't planned on it. And I was like, I know, but it's so good. So, if you weren't going to go going into the weekend, why not? Because your answer is the beginning of solving the problem for the Alien franchise. 2012's Prometheus is still the biggest opening for the franchise to date. Isn't that crazy, considering I think it's not a beloved movie? And that movie cost about $120 to $130 versus Alien Romulus's $80 million. What's the bigger number for? Star power. Charlize Theron, Michael Fassbender, who at that point had already become Magneto, but just in first class. He still hadn't done Days of Future Past, which performed better. But still, he was a Magneto. That's going to bring his price tag up a little bit, but I think also makes him, a name that fans and audiences know. Plus, Noomi Rapace and Idris Elba were just starting to blow up at that time, off of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Luther. I mean, Idris Elba, of course, had been on The Wire, but Luther had really put him on, the mainstream map, and then he was starting to get big movie roles in Hollywood, and this was one of the first ones. Prometheus so that's a pretty good cast, and you see that reflected in the opening box office. And the overall box office. Prometheus got to 402.4. Isn't that adorable? That used to be pretty good for a movie back then, about a little over 10 years ago. The highest for the franchise, not factoring in inflation. And it was enough to warrant a sequel, Alien Covenant, that brought in significantly less. So that's why Alien took a little bit of a break until now. Remember, Neil Blomkamp had been trying to do an Alien movie for a while, with Sigourney Weaver returning yet again. That never materialized, and the gig ultimately went to Fede Alvarez, who I think made a fantastic film, but it seems that nobody cares. All right, so, maybe Alien Romulus has incredible holds week to week thanks to word of mouth. I'm going to continue to tell everybody. And plays all the way through Labor Day weekend, right? Up until Beetlejuice opens on September 6th. Maybe. The B+ cinema score makes that a big maybe. If it was anywhere in the A range, an A-, all the way dare we hope to an A, it's very hard to get an A+. I really wish it had at least gotten an A-. I would feel a little bit better about its box office chances. For those of you wondering about cinema score, it's valuable in determining the longevity of a film, aka its legs. And a B+, some great movies. Joker, the first Joker got a B+, But, B+ is on the line. It could go either way with that kind of a score. And anything below a B+, unless it's a horror film, is not so great. Although, is Alien technically a horror movie? Then this would be an incredible cinema score. Take notes, those of you trying to defend the film. And this is the best cinema score for the franchise since 1986's Aliens. You'll see there isn't one for the original Alien. I don't believe cinema score was around then just yet. All right, so Prometheus came out so long ago. Speaking of, the Alien franchise has been around. The trades weren't reporting demos back then, but we do have some for Covenant, and that also skewed heavily male. At least Alien Romulus was very cheap to make, and it's doing very well overseas, particularly China. So then, maybe it continues to do well overseas, even if maybe domestic never materializes. Then maybe it blows up on digital, and even more so when it goes to streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu, right? As I said, the Alien movies are doing very well on Disney streaming services this weekend. So maybe somewhere down the line, Alien Romulus turns a profit. But you don't like it to be such a nail biter. Disney likes franchises that are in a little bit better shape. And on that note, Avatar of the Fox franchises that Disney bought, they didn't buy it for the franchises. They bought it for the infrastructure, etc. But they got some nice franchises in the deal. Avatar, still clearly extremely healthy. But Apes and Alien, they obviously need work. And even though, again, I liked these two movies, but they need work. And how much work does the studio put into these two franchises? In other words, time and money, before they cut their losses and say, you know what, maybe it's time for another break until it qualifies for yet another nostalgia play down the line with a new generation of creatives in front of and behind the camera. Because, these franchises will never totally go away, but it might be time for yet another break. Think Hollywood sometimes plays the Sleeping Beauty game. And what's the true love's first kiss? It's either a creative that really believes or fandom. Maybe sometimes both. It's like, a little party in there. All right, so anyway, Sigourney Weaver is 74, and she's still making Avatar movies, which means she's still willing to work. So I would say at the very least, before they maybe put Alien back to sleep, Disney, or in cryo sleep, right? Disney should try to make one more Alien movie with her involved, if they can do it. I'd be like, we got to make this work. And maybe add fan favorite synthetics, David and Andy, to the mix, right? New models if they have to. But, and the box office isn't great from Covenant for David. They had 2 Davids in that movie. And, but I think the hardcore fans are going to want to see those two come back. Andy for sure. And, Michael Fassbender's not really working these days. So I think a deal could be reached. Keep the budget down. Why not do that? That's what I would do. Maybe they need to lean even more into nostalgia. Maybe the story beats aren't enough. Maybe you need some of the faces. No spoilers for Alien Romulus. So we'll see. Whether or not to keep Fede Alvarez behind the camera, I think that depends I mean, I think the jury's still out on that. Let's see how Alien Romulus performs over the next few weeks at the box office and then later on digital and streaming. Because, I mean, Gareth Edwards got the Jurassic franchise, even though the creator had even weaker results. Really just horrible box office. All because Edwards can make a very good-looking movie for very little. And you know what? So can Alvarez. He might not make any more Alien movies. I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised that Gareth Edwards got Jurassic, considering how bad the box office was for the creator. I mean, here we're on the line, and even there, I'm like, no, this is bad. But with the creator, I was like, whoo! Audiences did not care for that. You know, they weren't even interested in checking it out. So, again, I think two very talented individuals that, I don't know. Gareth Edwards, I don't think owns a business hat, as I told you. Forget putting it on. And as for Alvarez, he tried. He really did. I think it's a great film. Let's see what happens with it. And I also think you need some name talent, right? That's why Gareth Edwards is for his Jurassic film is going to have Scarlett Johansson, although she doesn't know, she's not a guarantee. And then also Mahershala Ali. But that should help. I do believe that the Alien Romulus trailers presenting itself as a teen slasher film were a problem. Some of you were like, what are you talking about, the ad campaign not being great? A number of people who I spoke to said they didn't want to go because they felt it seemed too teen slashery, and to them, and they like teen slashers, but to them, that's just not what Alien's supposed to be. So that, you know, and I mean, for all of you who weren't going to go, that was because of the trailers. So for all of you defending the trailers, they couldn't have been that great, or more people would have shown up. I mean, that was a big point of contention in the comments on my main non-spoiler review. And you guys are like, what are you talking about? The ad campaign was great. No, it wasn't. We can tell from the box office. It was not great. How does Alien get casuals to come back? What would you advise? I think it's really tough. You know, it ain't easy reviving these franchises, man. All right, so how about the Alien Earth series? I'd be like, oh man, we paid for this television show, for FX Hulu, for this streaming show. I mean, suddenly if I were a Disney Fox streaming exec, I'd be nervous seeing these numbers. I'd be like, oh man, that seems to focus heavily on synthetics. Are there even any xenomorphs in it? I mean, I love synthetics. I also love Timothy Olyphant, although he's not a guarantee either. Kit Young is in this show, and I think that's very interesting because he was from Shadow and Bone, just like Archie Renault, who was in Alien Romulus. They're both fantastic actors. Fantastic. But Shadow and Bone was canceled. So, oh no, did you guys bring your canceled jinx with you? Again, I really enjoyed Alien Romulus. I think it's a much better, a different movie than the ad campaign presents it as. So again, I think, you know, it's not looking great, but maybe we'll get a pleasant surprise. Also, how are we going to get more women to see this movie/franchise, right? Now, obviously, sometimes a movie can do very well appealing to just men or women. And we've seen that. We've been talking especially about, you know, I was going to say focusing on female-led films because if it ends with us. But, you know, we've been talking a lot about how a lot of the traditional blockbuster films, sci-fi, superhero, stuff like that, are driven by men. But not this many men. And especially if you're only going to be a mid-range performer, then you definitely need broader appeal. But even big movies like Deadpool and Wolverine, that was 66% male, you're like, oh man, that's only 4 points lower. It makes a difference. Joker was 64% male. Isn't that interesting? And Apes was also 64% male. Speaking of, so this is very interesting. I think that, you know, even with a female lead, they just could not get women to check out Alien Romulus. Fascinating. I find that fascinating. All right, so speaking of Deadpool and Wolverine and Joker, Deadpool and Wolverine surpassed Joker late this past week to become the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. And everyone was very gracious about it on their socials. Golf claps all around. But Todd Phillips, boy, he was very nice, but I'm sure he's sweating Joker 2's box office performance. I mean, he decided to take a lot of risks creatively, which I think is very commendable, again, from a creative standpoint, but business-wise, what were you thinking, Todd? I think he has a Harley Quinn that's potentially not straight male friendly. And does the audience that she appeals to enough to, I mean, even if she can get broader female and LGBTQ appeal, I mean, she's not going to turn Joker 2 into Barbie, I don't think. Especially because she's struggled at the box office with some of her other films. And then also, of course, it's now a musical, but not like a show-stopping musical. And musicals also are tough. We'll see what happens with Joker 2. Maybe it'll get a lot of awards nominations, but then Joaquin just really ticked off Hollywood. So we don't know what's going to happen with Joker. I think it looks incredible, but even the trailer, I think, has not generated the same kind of excitement as the first trailer did. Nah. As I said, this ain't easy. Because, if you don't take risks and people are like, it's the same thing, you guys are ridiculous. All right, so on the overall all-time charts, Deadpool and Wolverine is currently at number 17 domestic and number 29 worldwide. So it still has a ways to go before it starts really charting all-time. But on the MCU all-time chart, it's number 9 already, which is impressive. And at the rate it's going, it's still number 2 this weekend. I think it'll definitely surpass Civil War to at least get as high as number 8. I still think more team-up movies is the way for Deadpool to move forward. I don't know if I'd bring him into the MCU overall. Keep him in his own space and change up his dance partner, right? But what do we do with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine? Does Feige put him in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars now that that's an RDJ Russo brothers nostalgia play? I'm into Jackman and maybe even Tobey Maguire. Do they make that an even cooler package or do they not fit? Because you know what? Maybe Deadpool and Wolverine just continue to dance by themselves over here in a separate space, right? While the MCU just all now reacts to evil Tony Stark. That's what those two movies have now become. Oh my God, it's evil Tony Stark. How do we handle that? So that's what that's become. Because you know what? Suddenly, that means, why would you bring in Hugh Jackman and Tobey Maguire potentially? Because when they see evil Tony Stark, that means nothing to them. Forget Robert Downey Jr.'s version of the character. They don't even know Tony Stark. So that's a potential problem that's developed. You know what? I'd say send Maguire or Garfield over to play with Reynolds and Jackman. Now, maybe that's a fun thing to do. Although I think most of us want off this multiverse merry-go-round at this point. What do you think? What would you do? It's still, they're making some money right now, but it's still kind of a mess over there in the MCU. All right, now here's another problem. It ends with us as making a ton of money, but has Blake Lively been J-Lo'd, or even worse, Chrissy Teigen'd? And what does that mean for her husband, Ryan Reynolds, and BFF Taylor Swift? Justin Baldoni has hired a crisis PR firm, and maybe Lively needs to hire one as well. You would think she'd already have one, or her current team would be versed in that, but it's not going well for her, and it's not stopping either. But the actual movie is close to $100 million domestic, which is incredible for such a low-budget film with no big stars, sorry, but it's true, and an IP from Colleen Hoover, her book series, that wasn't on the mainstream's radar. Everybody was like, what the heck is this? And it just blew up. Was it partially the controversy fueling this film? Have any of you seen the online drama and been like, man, maybe I should check this movie out? And then why didn't that online drama work for Don't Worry, Darling? All right, so it's again, interesting conundrum. It ain't easy to make, nostalgia plays aren't easy, and neither is making lightning strike more than once. All right, as for the rest of the top 10, Twister's held up nicely despite just hitting digital this past week, but it's still not performing as well as the 1996 original. It's particularly strange how poorly it's done overseas. That's very weird. And wow, look at that Coraline re-release from Fathom Events. That's a good sign for Laika, who finally has a new movie coming out next year with Travis Knight returning to direct at the studio that was founded by the Nike heir. Knight is then going to go back to live action with his take on He-Man for Amazon, but it will apparently go to theaters. Camila Mendes, for instance, just joined the cast this past week as Teela. But I gotta say, with Alien Romulus just coming in soft, is He-Man's cast maybe skewing too young? I think the idea is to bring in new fans, but does it, who's interested in a Masters of the Universe film? Is it only the fans of the original property? Netflix with the She-Ra show created a new fandom, but this movie's not going to be that. So I think Masters of the Universe has a tough road ahead of it. And I do think, based on what happened with Alien Romulus, that their cast is too young. If they haven't started filming yet, I would maybe go up to somebody, the way Marvel usually, that age range, the way Marvel usually brings actors in. Look at the cast for Fantastic Four. That, for the most part, actually skews older. And we'll see how that works out. All right, Trap continues to drop, but it's nothing compared to Borderlands, which has really taken a tumble. Rejoice, Borderlands haters. You're going to love this. 73% drop in just its second weekend. 73%, with only 13 million total after 10 days in theaters. And the overseas box office ain't coming to save the day. Borderlands is a Lionsgate debacle. We're going to talk about Legend of Zelda from Sony in a moment. But Lionsgate, they can't afford this kind of a flop. The movie cost $110 million, because it had a lot of reshoots as well, before advertising. And like many Hollywood studios right now, Lionsgate has been trying to stay alive as streaming and the rise of the mega studio has drastically changed the game. Lionsgate for a minute there wanted to be acquired, but nobody wanted it. Oh, that's so sad. So Lionsgate's going to keep going. They're going to keep trying. They're doing these moves on Wall Street. They're dividing their company up into different parts. They're like, go over there. Go stand over there. We'll tell you when we can afford for you to come back here. Right now, they've got John Wick, Ballerina's the next movie coming up there. Keanu Reeves has a small part. I don't know who wants, Ana de Armas I thought was very good in the Bond film, but, she's had a lot of flops since then. So I don't really know who wants to see a John Wickless John Wick, but really. Isn't that every other movie made by 87 North Studios, right? But Lionsgate also has Saw, The Hunger Games, and maybe the new Highlander, with Chad Stahelski, speaking of John Wick, and Henry Cavill. But as you can see, they don't have any blue chip franchises. Some of those used to be blue, but not anymore. Certainly not Borderlands. And while the live action Legend of Zelda is over at Sony, how is this not a huge red flag regarding moving forward with that Legend of Zelda live action film with producer Avi Arad, who's behind Borderlands? I mean, it's not at your studio, but are you paying attention? I mean, ain't nobody gonna feel sorry for Zelda when it flops over at Sony if they keep Avi Arad around. They're gonna be like, everyone's gonna be like, we told you, it was really obvious. Are you nervous about Zelda? And I mean, I enjoyed Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and it did better than Alien Romulus, but I don't have confidence in director Wes Ball, particularly again with this package. This is Legend of Zelda. You would think they could attract better talent, even behind the camera as well. Although Super Mario Brothers largely used first-time directors over at Illumination. What odds of success do you give the live-action Legend of Zelda with Ball directing and Arad producing? Pretty low. I guess I'll play the game. Some of you say I influence it, though. All right, let's just see what you guys, what odds you give it. And another film from India was able to just make it into the top 10, Stree 2, with less than 1,000 theaters. So that makes that even more impressive. Over on streaming, starting with Nielsen for mid to late July, as season 4 wrapped, The Boys rose to number 1. It went out at number 1, baby, on the overall chart. Hooray! That's fantastic. What a ride for that season. It started off being like really in a big political crossfire, but it ended with such a big win. Now, of course, it's been promised that season 5 is the final season of the show, but The Boys is spinning off shows left and right. So it makes us wonder who's going to escape to their own series. However, just the other day, Eric Kripke told fans that since they know it's the final season, the writing team plans to kill off a lot of characters. Oh, no! What character do you need to make it out of season 5 alive? I'm like, Frenchie and Kamiko, they just got together, man. Don't do it to them. I know, I'm sure the writers are going to be like, but it's going to be so sad. And I'm like, I don't care. Give them a spinoff, man. Although how many spinoffs can Amazon afford? And which character do you feel needs to go down with the show? I know some of you are saying Homelander, but I don't know. I feel let's see what happens. I feel he's got more story. I think they have to have a final season because the story just isn't progressing enough, because they're kind of like in this stalemate between Butcher and Homelander, and they need to have that finally go somewhere. And that would be obviously probably one or both of them not making it out. So that would be the end of that version of the show. But let's see. Let's see what happens. I think, Marvel's having the same problem, right? But we'll see if the boys can traverse that same gauntlet themselves. And how does The Boys season 5 avoid spoilers? I mean, for season 4, for the first time with the show, because it was already becoming very popular at that point, like really like a big show, they were more aggressive in protecting it. But they still gave out the whole season in advance to press. But still, there were no really big leaks that I saw. But season 5, like I mean, that was impressive that nothing leaked really from season 4 for the most part. I mean, that was really, bravo press, and everybody. It was great. But season 5, like if Homelander does die, how does that not leak? And forget from the screeners, how about just when they shot it on set? I really hope that they take the precautions necessary to protect that, and that everybody who does have advance access is respectful of making sure, protecting the final season experience for fans. All the glory of a hit show, but also all the headaches. House of the Dragon is League City, but yet still, as you can see, it still does very well. Right behind The Boys at number 2. So it'll be okay. But I hope if Homelander does die, I hope nobody ruins that he does. I avoid, the thing about the House of the Dragon leaks is that they're avoidable. Sometimes for big movies, it's almost impossible to avoid the leaks, but we'll see what happens. We'll see. How interesting is it, by the way, that if the big June shows, like going into June, we were like, wow, and it ended up being 50-50. The Boys and House of the Dragon are the winners. House of the Dragon's like, whew. While The Bear Season 3 and The Acolyte are the losers. That's right, I'm sorry. I think The Bear Season 3 is, if you look at the audience scores, it's a loser. And by the way, before we get to the originals chart, where there's some interesting stuff happening, The Acolyte, part 1 of the final season of Cobra Kai is doing pretty good here, as you can see, but nobody's talking about the show on social media. So it's wrapping up. Now, while neither The Bear or The Acolyte are on this overall chart, they're both on the originals chart. Both of them, that's right. The Acolyte finally got back onto the originals chart with its final episode, I believe thanks to a wave of bingers once it dropped, right? People who were waiting to watch the whole season at once. And it's still dead last, though. The entire show, I think, is dead. I don't think it's coming back. But which characters that was a inadvertent final season. But what characters should be saved here? Manny Jacinto drew a crowd at D23, and he was actually the only cast member from the show in attendance. So my bet is he's the only one that Lucasfilm keeps around. Disney is invested in him overall. He plays Lindsay Lohan's husband in the upcoming Freakier Friday. Jacinto's breakout role was on The Good Place. And after, I didn't watch that show, but after I liked him so much on The Acolyte, while that show was still unfolding, I watched a bunch of clips of him on The Good Place on YouTube, right here on YouTube. And he's actually a very talented comedian as well. Is there nothing you can't do, Jacinto? I hope it includes surviving The Acolyte. And I think he will. I hope he does more than survive. I hope he thrives. By the way, Kathleen Kennedy did show up at D23 on the final day, Sunday, at the Disney Legends ceremony to help bestow Harrison Ford's award, which makes it even more intriguing that she wasn't there the other 2 days at the experiences, the entertainment panel on Friday and the experiences panel on Saturday, where Dave Filoni was representing the Star Wars brand. So curious to see if we'll see some development, if this is a hint of potentially maybe something to come. Nothing particularly interesting happening on the movies chart, but I'll show it to you if you're interested. Also, I guess one thing is that in its 3rd week, after doing very well for the first 2 weeks, Beverly Hills Cop Axel F suddenly had the bottom fall out from underneath it. It's almost off the chart entirely. On Netflix's charts, the SpongeBob movie is still number 1, even though it apparently leaked with all those other things. And with shows, Good Girl's Guide to Murder is still number 1, but in terms of actual views, it's actually tied with Umbrella Academy Season 4. Although Umbrella Academy Season 4 dropped on August 8th, so not for the entire duration of this chart. But that's significantly less than part 1 of Cobra Kai's final season debut just a few weeks ago. Close to half, 50%. Maybe it's about, 60% or something of it. Not too surprising, though, when you consider that Season 3 of the Umbrella Academy was weak and Season 4 is downright awful. And word of that spread very quickly once the episodes hit, Thursday morning. Over on iTunes, Twisters is still number 1, and Universal, in fact, is dominating with the top 3 movies. It's nice to see audiences finally discovering Fly Me to the Moon on digital, great movie. And Horizon continues to do well on digital, despite Warner Brothers having just announced that it will hit Max at no extra cost this coming Friday. Please watch it so they eventually release part 2. And Ungentlemanly Warfare is almost out of the top 10, about to end a legendary run on digital. Doesn't seem to be helping Henry Cavill's career at all, though. Or Alan Ritchson. Why not? You'd think they'd be signing some sort of deals. As for the Hollywood, does no one in Hollywood do this the most cursory of research? That's because, as I've often told you, my theory is that a lot of people in Hollywood don't actually sample their own product. They don't watch the shows. They don't watch the movies. They're not actually fans of what they're putting out. So they don't really totally have an idea of what's happening, and they certainly aren't fans themselves. And I think that's a big part of the issue. All right, so as for this coming week, welcome to the bottom of the summer barrel. The Crow reboot debuts, also from Lionsgate. Are they about to have an even worse or more hilarious August? We'll find out. While Channing Tatum stars her fiancée Zoe Kravitz, who directs here in the thriller Blink Twice. Will this build on Tatum's momentum coming out of Deadpool and Wolverine, or waste it? The Rotten Tomatoes score so far is pretty good. Also, the movie Strange Darling will also hit theaters. On digital, this Tuesday, Inside Out 2 finally hits. Not Disney Plus, only on digital for cost. You got to pay for it. While on Friday, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's new crime thriller, Greedy People, debuts mostly on digital. I could find one theater in all of New York City where the film comes out this coming weekend. And hey, there's also this movie, Catching Dust with Jai Courtney, but I'm mentioning it to you because look, that's Starlight from The Boys. Good for her. She's had such a rough time. People were so mean to her with season 4, yet she really brought it, especially towards the end. I'm really glad to see her continuing on. With streaming films, it's direct to digital, but whatever, man, it's work. I don't see anybody else in any direct to digital movies from The Boys, do you? All right, with streaming films, Peacock has The Killer, Hulu has The Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat, and Netflix has Incoming, where I think I spy some social media influencers, maybe? All right, finally with shows, on Thursday, Netflix has more of that 90s show, while Hulu starts up season 2 of Reasonable Doubt. While on Friday, Pachinko is back on Apple TV. Man, I love Pachinko. What an incredible show. But it's been 2 years. Thankfully, Apple TV has a recap of season 1 that you can catch right here on YouTube on their channel. Or, if you never watched season 1 in the first place, go check it out. It's an incredible show. And it featured Anna Sawai pre her Shogun days. And she had a very small supporting role in season 1, but to her credit, very cool of her, she's back for season 2. Although I'm sure she filmed it before Shogun blew up. But, still very cool of her to return. And her role, it said, is bigger this season. So hopefully she'll help people discover Pachinko. Oh, it's such an incredible show. Please watch Pachinko. If you like Shogun, I don't know. I really like Pachinko. At least give it a try. All right. Also, this coming Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is the very first BTT Movie Club. I'm excited. Members at that level can join a live discussion about our first film, Godzilla -1. That's right. We're not going to watch the film together. You watch it on your own time, and then it's like a book club, but for movies. And then we're going to have a discussion together live to talk about the film. And here's where it gets even cooler. A few members at that level will be invited in advance to join into the discussion via Zoom link. And we'll change up who gets to participate on camera each month. So all members get a chance to be on camera for the discussion. So I wanted to let you know now so that you have a whole week to watch Godzilla -1 if you haven't already, or to refresh it in your mind. It's on Netflix still. And join or level up your membership so that you can participate in, again, the very first BTT Movie Club. That's this week's movie math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And how do you feel about Alien Romulus' opening weekend? Which direction do you spin it, positive or negative? And how do you think you can get casuals back into that franchise? Share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.